Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett. Today I'm going to show you how to revive, restore, and reproduce some geraniums. And we're going to finally harvest those onions that we've been growing all year. And then later on in the program, we're going to plant some winter radishes and some rutabagas, those winter turnips. And then we have a problem in our strawberry patch. But first of all, I'd like you to look at this window box. This is the one that has had petunias in all summer long, and about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they were getting pretty ragged and worn looking, so we cut them back to the ground, gave them a good shot of liquid fertilizer, and have gotten some new growth out of them. But you know, I'm not at all satisfied. This growth is pretty weak. The flowers are very small. Much of the foliage down below here is still yellow. There are brown stems in here. Plants such as this will never make it for fall. These are just not worth saving. So what I'm going to do is to clean this window box out completely right now. I'm going to plant some chrysanthemums in it. Now, I tell you, while we're speaking of that, this is a good tool, a little army trenching tool. It's a great one, good handy thing to use around the garden. Don't be concerned about these petunias. They've had a long and happy summer. Now they have done their thing, and we're going to just get them right out of the way. Now, I should say that when you make a window box such as this, be sure that you put some drainage holes in the bottom. Now, I have drainage holes about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, about every 8 or 10 inches along here, so that we can be sure that the plant's roots will not become waterlogged. Well, of course, I'm going to put some chrysanthemums in here, so let's talk about the soil I'm going to use. I'm going to say that you can go out to a garden center and spend a lot of money for soil, or you can go out to a garden center and get the ingredients and mix your own. In this instance, I'm using some loam and some sand, some builder's sand, coarse sand, not beach sand, and peat moss in equal quantities. And what we've done here is to mix this all up. We have a material which will hold moisture and yet at the same time allow the excess water to drain through because of the sand in it. So this is an inexpensive mixture. It may be that if you don't have, well, let's say if you don't have loam, you might very well have a yard or so of loam delivered to some back part of your property, and you'll use it from there year after year. Now let's add a little this potting mixture right over in here. You can always add more to this after I put the plants in, but I don't want to put too much in to begin with. Now I'm going to tell you that we're going to put in some chrysanthemums, and these are the chrysanthemums which I started last spring. I must point out to you that I started the chrysanthemums, each of these big plants, from a single stem about 3 or 4 inches long. And this is what they'll do by being pinched back a couple of times during the season. Now, I have one of these already dug. We'll dig another one. This, by the way, this little white variety, is one I really like called Baby's Tears. Handsome thing, goes on for a long time. We don't need all of that soil. Now we'll just move these right on back here to the window box. There's nothing about putting these in, just to simply be sure that you have them into a depth where you can be sure that you can water in there and the water won't just run off the front. So we'll put one in the middle, one at each end. This one will slide right into there. Let's see, that's not quite deep enough. Like that. The beautiful thing about this plant is that this will stay in blossom now for at least another 6 weeks. And so it'll go clear up into early fall, and if the weather is at all cool, it'll grow even later than that. But this window box is not just for flowers. Let's just pop in a little, excuse me, a little lettuce seedling. There we go. Now we'll have our flowers and our vegetables combined. Those could have a little drink of water, like this. They'll hardly know that they have been moved. All right, now let's go from here and talk about harvesting those onions. These are the onions which, in this first group, are the onions which I started as sets. This is a variety, excuse me, called yellow Stuttgarter, a very nice variety, the kind that you can buy at your hardware stores or garden centers in the spring. A yellow variety is the one which keeps the best and is the kind that most these outlets sell. You tell when an onion is ready for pulling when you see the stem won't stand erect anymore. It's just lax and it's lost all of its body here at what we call the neck. At this point, if you can braid them if you like to, but you can cut them off like this, leaving about 2 inches on the neck. This will shrivel right back and heal at this point so that the bulb will go through all winter long without rotting or without dying, without losing its moisture. Ordinarily, I would put these bulbs right out on the soil like that and let them dry for a matter of 4 or 5 days perhaps. But I'm going to use this space for other things in the garden, so right now we just pull them and put them in. Now this was a variety called yellow Stuttgarter, the kind that you can get from sets. But I want to go from here and talk about those onions that we grew from seeds. And I want to say, surely, that I think that this is the best way to do. Look at the size of these onions in comparison with the others. This is one called Yellow Globe, a truly handsome onion. These were started from seeds which were sown the 1st of March, grown indoors for about a month, then put out into the garden as what looked like little blades of grass. I set those about 6 inches apart, and you can see that some pretty nice onions. Now that's early Yellow Globe. This next one is a sweet Spanish. Again, nice onion. One of the things that I like about growing them from seed is that you can get those varieties which you can't get from sets. I think the story is that the white ones and the red ones just aren't all that good for keeping over winter, so the sets won't keep over. But now the yellow ones you can. Now what I'm going to do in here now is I'm going to prepare this ground so that we can put in some rutabagas and let's see, something else we're going to plant in this row. Some winter radishes. But before we do that, let's talk for an instant about the soil preparation, because there is no way that you can get crop after crop after crop from one piece of ground without putting some nourishment back in the soil. And I'm going to begin by dumping some compost on here. This is just what's left over after all the leaves and grass clippings and such rot down in the compost pile. To that, we're going to add a little quick-acting fertilizer in the way of 5-10-5. All I like to do is just a rather light sprinkling. If this were over a big area, I'd put about 4 to 5 pounds to 100 square feet. All right, now we have the ingredients in there. The next thing is use your spading fork, dig this over like that. You see how easy the soil is to use, to work, if there is enough organic matter mixed in with it. We'll go right on down this row eventually and do this whole thing, dig it over, rake it, and then it would be ready for planting. Well, we have a little section up here which has already been dug over and fertilized. And now I'm going to plant some rutabagas here. But I want to show you, first of all, a tool which we find pretty handy in the garden, just called a garden line. Now this happens to be made of aluminum. You can make your own out of wood. You see it has this little area here for reeling the line on, easy to store. Now it's true that your plants will grow just as well if they grow in a crooked row as though they grow in a straight one, but it's certainly easier to know where the plants are and to control the weeds if you do have a straight edge along it. Now, the next thing I want you to see is how I'm going to make the little furrow or drill in which I sow the seeds. Now, they're going to be a ½ inch deep. This is my planting board. You know, it's right up here at the tip. I have it beveled. And this is all we have to do is tip that over, line it up with a string, and just push down on it. Run it back and forth a little bit, and it'll make a perfect little trench in which to plant the seeds. It'll be straight, it'll be at the right depth, and then we take the seeds. Again, I don't want to sow these too thickly. We just sow probably, a seed about every inch apart or something like that is good enough. What we're going to do eventually is to thin these plants so that they'll stand roughly 5 or 6 inches apart. To cover them, that's all you do here. Bring a little soil in from the edges, like that. Pat them down. We'll give these a drink of water, and they'll be off and growing in a very short time. We'll follow their progress as they go along. We'll do the same thing with the winter radishes up at the other end of the row before we're through. Well, I have a little problem over in the strawberry patch, and I want to show you what a gardener has to look for and what to do about it. The other day, I was looking along here, I noticed that the plants mostly look pretty good, but here is one with leaves, although still green, are dying. A number of them are dying, and this plant has very small, weak growth. I don't really know what's the cause of this plant's difficulties, nor is that important. The important thing is that this is a diseased plant, and it has to come out of the garden before this disease spreads to other plants. So I'll tell you how we've done this. Gardeners have done this for generations. I'm going to move out some of the plants around it. Now you see, this plant coming from it apparently is okay. We'll just cut this runner off, move that one out of the way there, cut this runner, this one, move that one out, cut this runner. But I want to be sure now that when I dig that plant, it'll come right out and go into a basket. Now this is not going to go into my compost pile, you can bet that. This soil, something about that plant that's diseased, and in it goes. This is an old-time method, long before gardeners had high-powered medicines to protect their plants. They knew that if they got the diseased creature right out of the way and fill that soil up again with that hole up with new soil, then they're in pretty good shape. Now, with that ready to go, we can move some of these plants back again. This little fella can sit right in the middle there. This one, push that over in here. We'll soon fill this bed up with strawberry plants, even though we lost one of the old mother plants. Well, now I want to talk to you about some perennials. I have 3 or 4 different kinds I want to talk about today. One is just coming into blossom. Another has been in blossom for a long time. The third one is the one that we use for drying. Now let's go on up here in the perennial garden, and I'll show those to you. The first one is a type of sedum. Now many sedums creep along the soil, but this one is called Sedum spectabile. And this one does not creep. You see, it makes a plant about 18 or 20 inches tall. These flower heads will be solid color, and this Latin name spectabile will certainly produce a spectacular bunch of flowers before the season is over. Just beginning to open. Very, very hardy plant. Now next to it, I'd like you to look at this one. This is called the blanket flower, or the gaillardia, Indian blanket sometimes called. Lovely plant, descended from American wildflower, extremely hardy, will last for many, many years, and blossoms for a period of a couple of months in the summer. Now we go from there to baby's breath. Oh, I guess every gardener would like to have this kind of a plant in their garden because it has that light and airy texture which helps the other plant, sets off other plants. Well, this is also a delightful flower for a flower arrangement. You can imagine, for example, with roses along with baby's breath. This is what your florist sells and arranges around flowers of that nature. A flower with any kind of a blossom, which is a fairly large one, is best set off if there are some dainty ones around it, and this is a good plant for it. If you pick baby's breath like this when it's in full flower, hang it upside down like this in a dry, cool place out of the sun, those flowers will shrink a little bit, but they will still maintain most of their color, and you can use those in flower arrangements this winter. All right, now I have still another plant I want you to look at here, and this is the mint. Now I've told you about mints, and it looks as though this one is just spreading out all over my garden. If you look right down here at the base, you see I have that mint growing in a flower pot. I don't want that thing to go through my garden because I tell you, they grow just like wildfire and smother any nice plants that you might have close to it. But that's not the only thing that you can do with mint. You know, this weekend I happened to see a flower arrangement where they'd used a mint like this, cut off the lower leaves, and arranged it with a wildflower called Queen Anne's lace. Again, we had a lacy flower and a coarse leaf, very, very lovely. And of course, once this is cut, you get the fragrance of it. A lovely thing. By the way, these will root, and when you put them in a flower arrangement, pretty soon you have a bunch of rooted cuttings, and you can plant those out in your garden. Now, for 3 weeks running now, we've been picking corn, and now we're coming up to our 4th week. I have a variety here ready to go. You see there's 2 good ears on this stalk. A variety called Wonderful. This is a yellow corn, a handsome one. You see how well developed that is all the way down to the base of the cob. A good variety called Wonderful. We still have another variety to go beyond here, which will ripen in another couple of weeks. I think the thing you want to remember is to plant your corn at one time, but several different varieties. I heard a new corn story this week. You know, you've heard me say, get that water boiling before you pick the corn. I heard about this fellow down in Nantucket who actually takes a charcoal grill and a pail of boiling water out to the garden, picks the corn, or bends the corn right down into the pot. And I think that's a story to stop all of these stories. But I want to talk to you about geraniums and how to propagate them. But on the way in, I want to show you this particular plant called the resurrection lily. It has a strange name called Lycoris squamigera. Handsome lily that makes leaf growth in the spring, and you could think, well, gee, the flowers are about to come, and suddenly the leaves die back and disappear, and many a gardener has said, oh, gee, what did I do wrong? Along in August, right out of the bare ground with no leaves at all, comes this flower spot. We call this the resurrection lily because it appeared to die, but it came back to life again. But what I want to talk about mostly right now is geraniums. Along in the fall, many gardeners begin to listen to the weatherman that says a frost is due tonight, so they want to save those geraniums. They run out in the garden, dig some out of the soil, leave most of the roots in the soil, cram them in a flower pot, and then bring them indoors. All of a sudden, most of the leaves turn yellow, the plants quit blossoming, and then they think, well, what did I do wrong? What you should do is this. You should start right now with a good geranium plant, your best geranium. You're going to take cuttings from this one and propagate this so that we can have young, healthy, husky plants which will blossom during the wintertime. But don't pick your scrawny ones in the garden. Pick your best ones. What we do here, if possible, if the stem will snap off so you get a little cutting about 3 or 4 inches long, that is the best way. Now that came off pretty well. You see what we have here, a cutting about 3 or 4 inches long with a number of leaves. Now I'm going to get rid of some of those lower leaves because 3 or 4 leaves is plenty for this cutting to support. But this one has just been made. This is not ready for inserting in the rooting medium. Instead, I have a couple of cuttings here that I took yesterday. What's happened is, you see, the base of those stems has dried. And this is the key to the home gardener helping to prevent decay occurring here at the base of the stems. But these have now dried a bit. I can stick these in water just to moisten them, dip them in a rooting powder like that, shake off the excess. Now this cutting is ready to go into sand, and this is all I'm using is plain, ordinary builder's sand. Poke a hole with a pencil and shove this down in like that. And firm it in around it, and that will be ready for a drink of water and to grow. You've seen me make cuttings of many kinds of plants. I'd slip them in a plastic bag so they'd have a little greenhouse. This is not necessary or even advisable for geraniums because they're very susceptible to decay. They will do some wilting, but if a couple of times a day for the first week, you just give them a light sprinkling of water, they may wilt a little bit, but they'll come back. In about 3 weeks, they'll be rooted. And then we'll have a little plant here. This is another geranium. This one is simply one of those scented leaved ones. But you see those nice little roots started? Your roots should never be more than an inch long. A ½ inch is better. This little plant is big enough that we can set it out in soil now. Just make a hole for that and set it in here. And that's off and growing. We have some others, this is an ivy leaf geranium, started about a month ago, already beginning to make flower buds coming up on the top of it. Actually, a plant like that, I would say, is ready for pinching. Take that tip out and cause this plant to branch. Well, let's see if we can do a few questions today. I'm kind of interested in this first one. A gentleman wrote in to say, I planted 12 saffron crocuses last fall and am anxious to harvest a quantity of saffron. How should I go about it? Well, I hate to tell you, and I can't remember whether you need 1,000 crocuses blossoms or whether you need 10,000 crocus blossoms to get 1 ounce of true saffron. If I were you, I'd buy my saffron and enjoy those crocuses in the garden. The saffron, by the way, comes right from the anther, that orange anther of the crocus blossom. A question about Boston ferns. I was given a Boston fern, and you see one of them right up here. 3 weeks ago, and it's dying away. Could it be just pot-bound or need less light or what? What can I do to save the plant? First of all, let me tell you what a fern needs. It needs shade. I think your plant has been sitting in the sun. The soil should be evenly and barely moist at all times, and a plant such as that will use a good deal of moisture. Feed it no more often than once every 6 months with a half-strength houseplant fertilizer. Don't overfeed it. And finally, don't brush the foliage, because when you brush the foliage, it causes it to turn brown. This is from Washington, D.C. Is it too late to plant beets and string beans in my Washington garden? No, it isn't. You'll have a nice fall crop. You know, get beans in 45 to 60 days. When is the right time to harvest Chinese lanterns? When those little globes turn orange. If you pick them when they're green, they usually don't turn to the brilliant orange that you like. I should say that you want to be careful. I noticed in your letter that you planted 2 one year and you had 25 the next year. Heaven help you, because these can be terrible weeds. Be sure you plant them in a part of your garden that you don't mind devoting entirely to Chinese lanterns. I have a 4-year-old pear tree which hasn't blossomed. Well, they may take a number of years. Pears are very slow to coming into blossoming. But if you'll do this, if you'll take some of those upright growing branches and tie them over like this and tie strings back down to the trunk so those branches are going horizontally, something will happen within the pear tree within a couple of years to cause fruiting buds to set on this horizontal branch. My tomato plant leaves are curling down and there are black aphids on several of the plants. Soap and water sprays do not help. First of all, don't be concerned about the curling of the leaves. This is a physiological condition which won't hurt the plants. Nobody seems to know the cause, nor do we know anything to prevent it. However, those aphids will succumb to malathion or diazinon. And remember that you should try to keep the aphids off because they spread diseases, especially virus diseases. I really like to keep those aphids out. And this has been what I call the year of the aphid. We've had an awful lot of them. Last year I planted a dwarf red apple tree and a dwarf yellow one, 12 feet apart. Both trees showed growth last year. This year the red one flowered and set fruit, but the yellow did neither. What went wrong? Now, you said you planted those trees only last year. I'd say you're a mighty anxious gardener. Just give them a little bit more time and you'll get something out of them. I have a 5-year-old wisteria. What can I do to encourage flowers? Now, in August and September, go away from the plant about 2 feet and cut down with your spade all the way around and cut off some of the roots. Well, that's all I have time for this week. Next week, we're going to propagate some oriental poppies and some silver mound artemisias for your perennial garden. We're going to propagate some English ivies for indoors, and I must remind you that this is the time to order your bulbs for indoors and outdoors. I'm Jim Crockett in Crockett's Victory Garden. I hope you enjoy the program every week.